Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight, good citizens here. My name is Penny Wright. I'm the director of adult programs here, and we have some new faces and some very familiar faces. Welcome to all of you. I hope that you will take a few moments to browse and see what's going on at this library at various times, because we have quite a few programs for all ages. But tonight we're very delighted to have our first visit from Congressman Lee Zeldin. Some of you know a great deal about him, but for those of you who may not, I will tell you some things about him. United States Congressman Lee Zeldin grew up in Suffolk County, graduated from William Floyd High School in Mastic Beach, earned his bachelor's degree from the State University of New York at Albany, and then his law degree from Albany Law School, becoming New York's youngest attorney at the age of 23. He spent 4 years on active duty with the U.S. Army and served in different capacities, including as a military intelligence officer, a federal prosecutor, and military magistrate. In the summer of 2006, while assigned to the Army's elite 82nd Airborne Division, Lee Zeldin deployed to Iraq with an infantry battalion of fellow paratroopers in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. In 2007, he returned to Suffolk County with his family. It was at this time when he transitioned from active duty to the Army Reserves, where he currently serves with the rank of Major. He established a successful law practice in 2008 when was elected to the New York State Senate 2 years later in 2010. Lee Zeldin successfully fought to repeal the MTA payroll tax for 80% of employers, which he considered a job-killing tax that was hurting small businesses. He successfully repealed the saltwater fishing license fee and created the PFC Joseph Dwyer program, a statewide program in New York to help returning veterans cope with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. He sponsored legislation to enact the nation's strongest property tax cap and also helped reduce middle-income tax rates to the lowest level in 60 years. He also wrote the law that protects fallen veterans and their families from protests at military burials. In 2014, Lee Zeldin was elected to represent New York's 1st congressional district on the East End of Long Island. He serves on 3 U.S. House committees, a rare opportunity for a freshman congressman: Transportation and Infrastructure, Foreign Affairs, and Veterans Affairs, as well as several House subcommittees, including the Subcommittee on Aviation, which he serves as Vice Chairman. He also serves on the Subcommittee on Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation, the Subcommittee on Railroad, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials, the Subcommittee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs, the Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, the Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa, and the Subcommittee on Terrorism, Nonproliferation, and Trade. Congressman Lee Zeldin also serves as co-chairman of the House Republican Israel Caucus, which has over 100 members. He lives in his hometown of Shirley with his wife, Diana, and their twin daughters, Michaela and Ariana. Please welcome Congressman Lee Zeldin.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and for inviting me here to the library. First off, I want to say a big thank you to Penny and the library for hosting, but also to all of you to come out tonight and just hear a little bit of an update on what's going on in Washington, but also allow me to be able to hear from you and hear what kind of questions you have, to be able to have a dialogue here over the course of the next hour or so. It is a privilege to be able to represent you down in Washington. And I've come across colleagues who, some, they haven't even been there that long. Others who have been there for a really long time. and I hear them complaining. And I'll tell them, I said, listen, I guarantee you, I can find someone in your district willing to do your job without complaining. And usually they pause for a second, they look at me, regardless, whether they're just got there, they've been here a long time. They look me in the eye and say, you know what, you're right, get a better attitude and they go about their day. It's a privilege. Now, I just got sworn in 13 months ago. When you first get to Congress, they give you one of these pins. It's your member ID. Your seniority number goes on the back of your pin. There's 435 members of the House of Representatives. The number on the back of my pin is 434. 435 is Ryan Zinke of Montana. Now, I'd like to say it's because he's a Navy guy and I'm an Army guy. I give him a hard time for that. He was a 26-year Navy SEAL, so it's all in good fun. I do have to remind him of that. I'm giving him a hard time. I'm just kidding. Actually, we just had dinner about a week and a half ago in D.C. with Rob O'Neill, who's a Navy SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden.
Wow.
Now, through life, we go through a lot of opportunities to hear cool stories. That one definitely takes the cake. But yeah, so Ryan Zinke's 435. And, but there are such important issues right now facing our community, our state, our country. You can't wait for 434 to become 200 before you start weighing in on issues that you're passionate about. A lot of what I do is associated with the committees that I'm assigned to. So transportation infrastructure, you think of the 1st Congressional District of New York, out of 435 districts across the country, how many other districts are almost completely surrounded by water? How cool is that? 1st Congressional District of New York only has about 13 miles or so connected to land. Everything else connected to water. The Transportation Infrastructure Committee is not just our roads and our bridges, but it's our skies with aviation. It's our barrier beaches. It's our waterways with the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a really cool committee to be able to serve on. And railroads. Under that jurisdiction. Pipelines are part of that jurisdiction. And I'm also on the Veterans Affairs Committee. A lot of people who live in Suffolk County don't realize this. But Suffolk County not only has the highest veterans population of any county in New York State, but Suffolk County has the 2nd highest veterans population of any county in the country. So it's pretty cool to be able to serve on Veterans Affairs, and there are a lot of issues worth tackling. And if you're ever looking for examples of how government can be more efficient, I'd be happy to share some very interesting and disturbing stories of VA hospital construction and projects where you might try to advocate for an extra $1 million for your local VA center in Northport. The Denver VA hospital construction project, which was originally supposed to be $600 million, is currently operating over $800 to $900 million over budget. The VA is operating off what they call an artificial budget. Now that's concerning right there. And this was my first hearing when I got to Congress. The VA is testifying about they're operating off an artificial budget. And questions came around to me. I said, listen, I just got here, so I was thinking, I hope I'm not embarrassing myself with this question. But what's an artificial budget? That's what they're operating off of. One of my colleagues, by the way, asked for a timeline of when we were going to have a budget. The person says that they didn't know. So this woman, she wasn't trying to embarrass the person, but she ended up asking the follow-up question when she was going to get a timeline of when she was going to get a timeline. But anyway, the Veterans Affairs Committee gives us an opportunity to do a lot advocating on behalf of our veterans. That's just an example of one small disturbing piece, but there's a lot to talk about there. And I'm also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'll tell you, our whole country, but also for us here on Long Island, so close to New York City, we are all concerned about and desiring a safe and secure country. And there's a lot going on in the world. And we are being tested all over the place. People are testing each other all over the place. And we have individuals who do not like our way of life. We do have a great democracy where you all are here tonight. I believe that we live in the greatest country in the world. I am unapologetically someone who believes in American exceptionalism and American greatness. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I think that that's a great thing, and we inherited it. One of the reasons why I wanted to serve in the military was to be able to wear the same uniform of the people who came before me, willing to sacrifice everything. I think of our nation's greatest generation, and you look at a map when Nazi Germany was extended to its furthest borders. You just look at what Europe looked like at that moment. And that will be any motivation that you would ever possibly need, if you needed it, to go find a World War II veteran and shake their hand and say thank you for your service. For me, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to serve in the military, why I'm honored to serve on Veterans Affairs and on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but also to be your representative. There are so many different issues that get tackled down in Washington that the media and the American people don't hear a lot about because they aren't controversial. If you put on national TV, you go home, you put on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they're probably talking about the presidential race. Maybe there was something that blew up somewhere in the world. They'll talk about that. If they're talking about Congress, maybe there's some type of controversy to talk about. But what's amazing is that every single day that I'm down there, I watch things get done where Republicans or Democrats are working together, and it never gets reported. It was almost a year ago, we overhauled the sustainable growth rate. It's called the doc fix. After 17 patches and providers threatening cuts, they weren't going to accept Medicare patients anymore, services were going to get cut, this company was going to go out of business. Instead of patching the doc fix again, like what had happened with the SGR, like what happened for 17 times before that, we overhauled the sustainable growth rate. It is the first entitlement reform in 20 years. $3.9 trillion of savings to the federal government. And the reason why no one found out about it was because at the end of the day, there were like 392 out of 435 of us who ended up agreeing on the final version. There wasn't any controversy attached to it. But we passed the Clay Hunt SAVE Act, passed and signed into law. Republicans and Democrats working together to help our veterans with the mental wounds of war. Too many of us voted for it, I guess. At the end of last year, we passed a 5-year fully funded highway bill, first time in a decade. 5-year fully funded highway bill. At the same time, we passed an education bill and a budget. And it was pretty wild that this all happened like in a matter of 8 days. Now, it's not all pretty. There is controversy. There is debate. It's America, where obviously I don't think that any of us wish that the debate and the disagreement would completely disappear. I mean, we have a diverse country. We have a diverse country geographically, ideologically. We have multiple parties being represented. There's a lot of diversity. Sometimes, when things don't get done because there's a fight, it's actually a good thing because it was a really bad idea. Other times, something doesn't get done that should get done because of the fighting, that's what everyone gets upset about. That does happen. It's not 100% of what happens in Washington, but that does happen too much. Now, there can be a lot of discouragement with the direction of our country at any given moment. But I'll tell you, when you're in the Capitol, and if any of you ever come to visit the Capitol, let me know. I'd love to, we have someone on the team who gives a great tour of the Capitol. I'm convinced he makes about 90% of it up. But it's very believable. It's a very believable tour. And as you're taking your tour, you could go to Statutory Hall. the chamber, the House chamber from 1807 to 1857. You can see the mark on the ground where Abraham Lincoln's desk once was. Or from John Quincy Adams's desk. He would sit at his desk, he wouldn't tell anyone this little secret. But Millard Fillmore's desk, at the other side of the chamber, the opposition would stand over there and they'd be whispering to each other, plotting against John Quincy Adams. And because of the bizarre acoustics in Statuary Hall, he can hear, it was sounded like someone was screaming into his ear. John Quincy Adams never told anyone that. But I'll tell you one thing that I will remember for decades from now, reflecting on my time in Congress. And it's something that I remind myself about every single day. And it was a moment in time, leaving Washington, D.C., on an airplane, two gentlemen in the rows in front of me wearing suits. And as the plane was taking off, they were looking outside the right side of the plane. And they were looking at the Washington Mall from the way the plane was traveling at that moment. And I couldn't help but watch their eyes shifting around and taking in the sights of the Washington Mall, the Capitol, the White House, Washington Monument, Jefferson Memorial. Their eyes were shifting all over the place. The most special part of the experience was as the plane got far enough away from the Washington Mall, both of these gentlemen, independent of each other, they weren't even talking to each other, just doing the same exact thing, pressed their heads against the far end of the window to catch a last glimpse of the Capitol. There is a lot that we can be discouraged about, hoping for a better direction for our country. But you get those opportunities to be reminded that people really do care about our country and love our country and don't take what we have here for granted. Don't take our freedoms and liberties for granted or the sacrifices that have been made for it. As we open up our conversation here for some Q&A, I will just use a very broad overview of some of the angles that we care about and spend some time thinking about. I mentioned earlier about the need to strengthen American security, both domestically and also abroad. The need to help grow our economy. That's just not only about reducing the cost of living or reducing the cost to do business. The fact is we aren't all rich. If you live on Long Island, I've been working on this for years, whether it's my colleagues up in Albany or colleagues in Washington, D.C., they see how much we all make, and they're convinced that we are all wealthy because of the average income. But helping grow our economy, and not just create jobs, but to create good paying jobs. Because we don't have a problem with just unemployment, we have a problem with underemployment. There's a need to do a better job improving the quality of education in our schools. I've been a critic of Common Core. I'd be happy to explain why. I know that divides the crowd, but I'm just being candid with you. I've been very critical of Common Core. The need to improve healthcare in America. And not just with debates over sound bites, but actually debates over policy solutions. Because it's not just about a goal, how are we going to get there? But that's important, improving the quality of healthcare here in America. Safeguarding our environment. Some real local issues, working with the Army Corps to get new projects started or to stop the sale of Palm Island, to be able to preserve and protect this precious island that when you visit it, it is like you are thousands of miles away from home. It's right here. I mean, seals and the wildlife and just the rest of the wildlife. It's amazing what's there. And this is our district, right off of our coast. So those are a few of our priorities, helping our veterans, our first responders. We permanently reauthorized the Zadroga Act as well in December. But that's a broad overview of some of the topics we focus on, but there are a lot of individual specifics that keep us busy. We just opened up an office in Riverhead as of the beginning of this month. So we also have mobile office hours. I think we're in the process of doing one in Bridgehampton soon. Yeah, I know we're scheduling one in Bridgehampton shortly. So the mobile office hours are important, and I like to be in communication with all of you. That's why I'm here. But I'm also, you can sign up for email updates. My website is zeldin.house.gov. You can visit our website, get updates there. You sign up for email updates. I like to do teletown halls about once a quarter, where we'll call everyone's house and you participate, you answer questions. We're on social media, so Facebook, Twitter, but you can call, you can write letters, whatever is your preferred method of communication. Mark Woolley is here. Mark is my district director. Nicole is my scheduler, but she's also someone who's kind of like the jack of all trades, or the Jane of all trades? The Jane of all trades? The Jane of all trades. Is that okay? Eric Amadon is outside talking to a couple people. He was just, he's my chief of staff. And so we have a team here on Long Island, an office in Patchogue, Riverhead, an office down in Washington, D.C. as well. We successfully closed over 2,000 cases last year. It's great when I get to travel around the district and people say, thank you for helping me do so-and-so or such and such. And I'm just able to put a smile on my face and say, I'm really happy that you're thanking me. But it's actually a member of the team who really did all the heavy lifting. We have a good team handling constituent cases. We prefer that if you call that it's with regards to federal issues. We've had people contact us. I saw Bill, right? Did you have someone contact you about getting their cat out of a tree?
Correct.
Yeah, we've had people contact us about getting cats out of the trees, potholes at the end of the driveways. We don't have pavers. This isn't the town highway department. However, feel free to contact us about anything. And even if it's not something that directly we can help with, maybe we can contact someone at that appropriate level of government to be able to help you. So that's a little bit from the constituent services end. But again, thank you for having me here. I look forward to doing it again. Thank you again to Penny and to the library. Oh, and if you have a question,
Okay.
there are microphones that are getting passed around.
Well, we'll pass it to those who you choose.
Okay.
You can choose the questions, the questioners,
Okay.
and then we'll give you a microphone. And if you could stand and identify yourself, that would be great. And if you could limit it to 2 minutes, that's a very generous limit, by the way. Yeah. But we're going to be looking at our clocks here, so. So, we want to get started on that. And Nicole has one and I have one, so we'll come around to you when you're called.
Okay, all right. So it will start. We'll go this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for being here. My question is, and I think I'm sorry, my name's Jeff Kirby from Hampton Bays. You have people who work in unions, corporations, county, state, federal jobs. They get incredible benefits. I pay for the benefits through my taxes, as does everyone else here. I can't even get close to the benefits that they get. It would cost me 5 times the amount. So if all those people are Group A, and they're getting a discount because they have a large population, why can't the rest of us who are Group B go to the insurance companies and get similar good medical plans? And I know it's very hard, your first term, but you have the lobbyists from pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies who are really running the show. How is Congress going to resolve this problem where people can have health care that's truly affordable and, help people out who just don't have it right now?
Okay, that's a great question. And I don't know how familiar everyone is with, maybe some of you might have actually been signed up with them. The Health Republic of New York, you familiar with the issue of Health Republic of New York? New York State we had one co-op under the exchange. And it failed. In November, we had cancer patients undergoing treatment at Sloan Kettering, and in the middle of their cancer treatment, being told not only that your coverage was going to be canceled in the future, saying, we aren't covering your treatment right now. Imagine going through cancer treatment at Sloan Kettering in the middle of it, on your way in, being told that that treatment may not even be covered. One co-op. Now, it's important to understand what happened with Health Republic, because it actually directly answers the question of what the reality is now and how to fix it. Health Republic of New York, instead of creating their own, it was created, by the way, by the Freelancers Union, which, I mean, it's not, they weren't health experts. So it wasn't like, you know, someone who, you know, was coming from some Fortune 50 health company, and they spent the last 30 years trying to figure out how to build health plans. So the Freelancers Union creates Health Republic of New York, and instead of creating their own health plan, they rented a plan from MagnaCare. So let's just say you wanted to start a new business. You want to open up a grocery store right across the street from Stop & Shop. But you need to figure out where am I going to get my products from. You figure, all right, I'm going to buy my products from Stop & Shop. And I'm going to bring them across the street. Now, how am I going to sell my products that I just bought from Stop & Shop? I'm going to reduce the price by 10 to 15%. Makes sense, right? Problem is, as far as a business model, it's guaranteed to fail. So the way that these programs are set up in New York State, it's a huge problem when you only create one, and they're not in competition with anyone. And that is what is done through regulation, through oversight, the Department of Financial Services in New York State. If you are going to have healthcare plans that cover us here, let's say in Suffolk County, you can't just have one. And even if you just have one, this is the one that we had with Health Republic of New York, and it was a business model that was guaranteed to fail. Listen, I mentioned earlier, as opposed to having fights over sound bites, we need to get in the weeds as far as the specific policy. And that is one of the keys in order to have something more affordable. Now, you gave a scenario of someone who's not in a union, employed, unable to obtain the same quality of health insurance. Now, there's a big difference between being employed by a huge company and being employed, getting paid the same exact salary, doing the same exact job for a small business. Because your employer, when they go out into the market and they're trying to buy a policy for your 5 employees or your 15 employees, they're not going to get the same amount of coverage as that larger company that is going into the market to buy coverage for 15,000 employees. So as I was listening to your question, the first part of the question, as far as access to affordable healthcare and high quality healthcare, I will say it really depends, the way that the whole system is set up right now, it really depends on who your employer is and how large they are when they go into the market to buy a policy. Now, you can never truly have free healthcare for every single American in the country. There's a debate that goes on because ideally, that sounds great, but you have to get beyond the soundbite and look at the specific policy to make sure that the numbers work. You have to make the numbers work, and it can't always be based on the most rosy of estimates. So I would just offer that some of the debate that takes place in Washington and in the media and across the country, as we try to get to a goal of having more people covered, we're not always relying on the most accurate numbers in predicting how everything is going to balance out to implement a plan. So that's part of it as well. Now, if we have time at the end, I'll be happy to go back and finish what can be a 30-part answer, but those are like 3 or 4 thoughts to get started. And I will keep working my way around them.
Judy Roth from North Sea. I read in the paper that you and 2 colleagues are planning to go to Iran. And I was
You want to come?
Yes, actually, I would love to. But I'm just wondering why and what you think you will achieve by going there, just the 3 of you.
Yeah. Well, I hope you don't mind. I submitted a visa application for you too when we went. By the way, something that was absolutely priceless, I'll never forget. I mean, literally 50 years from now, I will remember the look on the Iranians' face when I walked into the embassy about a week and a half ago, and they saw 3 members of Congress walk in with visa applications. No member of Congress has actually been to Iran since at least the 1979 hostage crisis. Listen, we didn't put a visa application in to go on vacation to Iran. That's the wrong place. If anyone wants to go on vacation, you're not going to Iran. We sent a letter with the application to lay out. There's a letter to the Ayatollah laying out several different ways that it can be a very productive trip. Multifaceted. One of which is they have elections coming up. It's a timely request. Elections are coming up. It's a request to be there to observe the elections, not monitor the elections, not inspect, to observe. It's part of it. Secondly, we have Americans who are currently in Iran. I was with the family of Robert Levinson, his wife, as well as his son in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago. We actually don't know exactly where Robert Levinson is, but there was a video that emerged year 2010 after his capture, after a lot of people said he died. There was a new video that popped up, so there's hope that he's there. But there's also an American businessman, citizen, who is currently being unjustly imprisoned. We requested to meet with the Americans who are being held there. We wanted to meet with them with regards to the implementation of the Iran nuclear deal, to be able to visit some of the nuclear sites with them as part of that effort. Want to talk to them with regards to the 10 detained Navy sailors. I have been very upset with the way that our Navy sailors were treated. They've been used as propaganda. They not only have been using videos and pictures of these sailors, and just a few days ago they took out a new video, new pictures of one of the sailors crying, giving medals to the general in charge of the IRGC, generals in charge of the IRGC for the capture. I'm giving you a sampling, but there was a lot that we put inside the letter of what would make for a productive trip. Now, I believe that they should grant the visa application. I believe that we should go, and I think that it would be very helpful for us to be able to come back and say firsthand, and I'll tell you, I will be brutally honest. I went to Iraq on Christmas. It's one of the advantages of, I'm the only Jewish Republican in Congress. One of the advantages is that Christmas is, for a guy like me, is usually spent between Chinese food and a movie. So I was able to go to Iraq. I didn't get either, but I was able to visit our troops on Christmas. When I came back from the visit, and the meetings were great. I mean, we were like Lieutenant General Sean McFarland, the guy who's actually in charge of the battle against ISIS in Iraq and Syria, to be able to sit down with him and actually talk about what's real and what's not real. Before I went over, I've been critical about the strategy in Iraq and Syria and elsewhere. But I've been critical about the strategy against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. I came back home and I said, you know what? We actually have a plan in Iraq. It's going in the right direction. It's tenuous. It could go in the wrong direction at a moment's notice. But there actually is a plan. It may not work. There actually is a plan. And in Syria, I will tell you that things are 100 times worse than I thought that they were before I took my training. And there's no plan. I mean, the closest that what we have in Syria to a plan is a strategy to try to run in place at best. Before I went over, I was critical of the strategy in Iraq and Syria. You go over there, you see firsthand, you have the meetings, you come back and you say, you know what? This is what's going on in Iraq. Here's the real situation. Here's what's going on in Syria. I didn't realize how much of an issue we're having in Libya until I took the trip. And it's not just, you could push ISIS out of Iraq and Syria. Their command and control node would pop up like that in Libya. And in Mali, Indonesia, West Africa, Somalia, it's really spread. And it's not just ISIS. It's a lot of groups. So with regards to the visit, I think it could be a productive visit. And I'd come back, I'd be brutally honest. Now, by the way, the Ayatollah and some of his people have made comments against myself and the 2 other members of Congress who put the request in. And one of them, the top leader of parliament, said, we don't need foreign interference with our national affairs. We already know that we have the greatest democracy in the Middle East. So Well, there it is. Next question.
Joanne Sanborn from North Sea. My question is, and thank you for your service for our country. My question is, Bernie Sanders, with regard to healthcare, wants to create a universal healthcare based on Medicare. What are your feelings about that?
Well, there are components of the Medicare plan, specifically within Medicare Advantage, of people who are very happy with the coverage that they have. I will say this about Mr. Sanders' plan, is that I have some issues with the math right now. One is it assumes $6 trillion of savings, and there isn't enough specificity as far as exactly where that $6 trillion of savings is going to take place. He's proposing tax increases. It's not just on the wealthy. On every single person in this room would be paying a little bit more to help pay for it. I personally have some issues with that because on top of that, the estimate is about $14.4 trillion. Yet the cost over 10 years, the cost of the implementation of the plan, because you have to enroll 29 million more Americans, the cost of the plan is estimated at $28 trillion. So, and by the way, I think Clinton's going to vet. Actually, she already is. Hillary Clinton is vetting him out a little bit on the math, because the math it sounds good. If every single person in this country had health care, I mean, who can be against that idea? The issue is there's a tax component of it that is about half of what the cost component is. We have a $19 trillion debt. I mean, you could just say, let's just go from 19 to 33. There are other issues of other stuff that will also add to the debt. I'm concerned, maybe someone else asked me, it's a different topic. But the cost is a lot more, and then when you say you're going to save all those trillions of dollars but not specifying exactly where it's going to come from, and on top of it you're going to roll 29 million more, that's my biggest concern right now. But you know what, I think it's going to vet out right now in the next month or two in the Democratic primary because Hillary's talking about it.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, this was the fourth gentleman. Then we'll work our way back. I saw
Oh,
you,
okay.
so 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ron Fisher, and I'm from Flanders. You had helped us last year trying to get a zip code for our area to distinguish us as part of Southampton instead of Riverhead, and I was wondering if you had an update for us.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. And we could, the play-by-play on this issue daily has been, it's been quite a battle. Creating a zip code it has been a battle down in Washington. So the first request that was submitted was for, I guess it was last summer. We submitted a request that with 3 zip codes: Flanders, Northampton, Riverside. 11901. Is everyone familiar with this issue?
Yes.
Okay, I got a few. So just a quick background on what the issue is. You can live in Flanders, Riverside, Northampton, and have the same exact address by number as someone who lives in the town of Riverhead. There are people who know who has the same address as them in the town of Riverhead, and they get together and exchange mail. This has been going on for a long time. This issue isn't new. Hillary submitted a letter, I think when she first came into office. At some point while she was in office, Hillary submitted a letter. My predecessor filed. Yeah, Ray, was it a letter or a bill? Bill. Okay, it was a bill. So it's been going on for a while. So the first request that's submitted to the USPS, they deny, saying that we don't need it. So what we do is, as a matter of, well, the next step of the fight was we appeal that letter. So now going through in the appeals process, we basically debunk their entire letter. And the reasoning that they gave for denying the request is the exact reason that, I mean, once you debunk it, I mean, that's the exact reason why the request was filed in the first place. And if you are a senior and you're trying to get something critically important delivered to you and it's not getting mailed to you in time, or you are calling 911 and 911 is going to the wrong house, these are fears that are very real. And these were all part of our follow-up letter as part of our appeal, part of which was having to give them a list because they were denying the fact that there were people who have the same addresses as each other in the two towns. We submit the appeal, they deny the appeal. Now this is how the process goes legislatively and as far as oversight. The House committee that has oversight over the USPS is the House Committee on Government and Oversight Reform, or Oversight and Government Reform. The chairman of the committee is Jason Chaffins. I have taken Jason out to dinner. I've spoken to him on the floor. I've sent him follow-up emails, texts. Their committee has been very engaging with us. And now OGR is in touch with USPS. I have met with, I met with someone, what commission was, it was like the Regulatory Postal Commission. I found someone on the commission and found someone who knew him and took that person out to E2 in Washington, D.C. to explain what was going on. That person said, the next step is you need to get you in. We need to meet with number 2 at USPS. Everything was great. Number 2 actually agreed to the meeting. Then it went radio silent. I have tried throughout this entire process to meet with the Postmaster General, and they won't meet. So we are working through oversight and government reform because the USPS's budget, the oversight of the entire of the entire Postal Service, as well as legislation that gets passed, comes out of the committee. So the threat is lingering right now of going to that last resort of trying to get it done through a bill. But what we're trying to do right now is OGR is working with USPS to try to get them to sign off on it out of DC, which is the quickest process from this point. They're very well aware, though, at this stage, that this is the last option. And by the way, one of the reasons why we're not crazy about having to go the bill route is it's only worked once. But if we have to go there, then that's the next part of the process.
We'll wait until the end, and maybe there'll be more time, but
Thanks for the question.
should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, sure.
I just think maybe you should go to nicer restaurants. That's my suggestion. Maybe that's it.
It was Jason's favorite restaurant in New York City, he told me.
I trust you.
Maybe the company needs to get better. Maybe it's me.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Bill Connors. I'm from East Quad. Despite the fact that you're number 434, I see that your license plate is number 1. Congress number 1. So that must say something about it to have that number 1 license plate. Anyway, my question is this. Very quickly, the ocean is approaching on Dune Road and coming into the Bay. And it's, I'm not an environmentalist per se, but I live close to it. I think it's getting worse and worse and worse year by year. And the issue always seems to be who's going to pay for it. The town says the town, the town says the town, they say the feds. I think it should be part of the responsibility of the federal government to do this, because it's getting pretty bad. And I'm just wondering where we are on that.
Great. Thank you for asking that question. I totally agree. I remember, and by the way, talking about, I mean, some of you I've known for a long time. I was thinking, Beth, raise your hand. Beth and I, this is the first time we're seeing each other since high school. Grew up together, though. Literally, we weren't there together, but we were at the prom together. Just, we had separate dates and stuff. But we were there together, There's hundreds of other people. And what we would do back then, or at least what I would do, you ever go to like Summers and Neptunes?
Yeah.
18 a party, 21 a drink, right? So you go, when you go to Summers and you pull out of the parking lot on Dune Road, sometimes during your 2 hours or 3 hours in there of trying desperately to work up the courage to ask a girl to dance and never doing it, and leaving depressed, is that what makes you even more depressed is you pull out of the parking lot, you take a left-hand turn, and it feels like you're driving into the ocean. The ocean, the bay, it's like all connected. Or it took a right-hand turn out of it. This isn't a new issue, is the point. It's been around for a long time, since I was first driving when I was in high school. First off, the road has to be raised. It has to be widened. You have to have a physical structure in place with regards to the dune itself. It's not just about raising and extending the road, but you have to have a barrier there that is more stable. And I believe that the large bulk of the costs should be picked up by the federal government. Now, this is what makes me a little bit, it might make me by the way, I hate the word politician. I hate to say it. I hear it, just like. But what might make me a bad politician is that, like, maybe good ones will come here and say, well, I think it's this other level of government, like they need to go get me money. That's not me. I actually try to own as much of the issue as possible. I like the challenge, and I like to try to get it done. I personally believe that it should be the federal government that picks up at least most of the tab to take care of what needs to get done. Now, I believe, and I've written a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers on this, and we've met many times with the Army Corps of Engineers on this. Bill can personally vouch for it. The Army Corps of Engineers, when they see Bill call, this is one of the topics that they know he's going to ask about. So they pick up the phone, and Bill asks anyway, is that what we want to see is that as part of the Fire Island to Montauk Point plan, this $700 million plan for Fire Island, and part of that funding should go towards everything that I just stated for Dune Road. Now, I will tell you that there have been mixed messages sent from more local levels of government as far as pursuing alternative plans in 2015. But we have had a good, productive dialogue with the new supervisor, and I think there's good chemistry there, and I think we're on the same page. Why not? We're the ones suggesting that that we pick up most of it. So but that's my personal opinion of what needs to get done and how it needs to get done. Broad overview. There was a question here.
My name is Sarah McNally, and I'm with the Set Hopper. Oh, thank you. I read the papers constantly during the week about all the corruption that's going on. These wonderful politicians, or whoever they are, go to jail, and they're allowed to collect free medical benefits, $500,000 a year. I was wondering what all those people in Congress, the 435 you mentioned, are going to do about stopping that grant.
Well, I'll tell you the issue that you're reading about right now is actually at the state level, right? There's some sentencing that's coming up, and the stories that have been in the news in recent days has been with regards to state legislators. In order to change the rule on those state legislators, it has to be done up in Albany. Congress isn't, you can't wait for Congress to change New York's law for it. to change New York's constitution for it on some issues that are important to us. For me personally, if you ask me, I don't think that if you're convicted of a felony, you should get your pension. That's my personal opinion. But as far as procedural, from this point forward, it's going to require state legislators in Albany to change state law that would prevent. By the way, this almost got done a year ago up in Albany. I mean, I've heard from state legislators that there was a three-way agreement with the governor and state legislature to get it done, and it just didn't get done. I will share, now that I've answered that part of the question, I just want to share a personal thought. It won't be in the paper that I didn't take a bribe today. It won't be in the paper that I didn't cheat on my wife. It doesn't sell newspapers. There are good people in office that, I mean, they get vilified. And it's important that I get to know a lot of these individuals, like right down in Congress right now. There are, I mean, some of the most, liberal Democrats, conservative Republicans, and people in between who I've come across who have been branded a certain way. We all have a perception of them. Actually decent people. And they're there for the right reasons, and they read bills and they ask questions. But it doesn't sell newspapers when they don't do something bad. When I was up in Albany, there were people up in Albany who really cared about their committee that they were a chairman of. But it doesn't sell. So I would just offer, as I know that it's unsolicited, and I answered the first part of the question. The second part, though, I would say, is that we do have people in government who aren't doing bad things, but that doesn't get spoken about. Enough. Now, my job, I was a soldier before being in elected office. The most popular job in the United States of America is the American soldier with an approval rating above 90%. The least popular job in the United States of America is the American politician. It polls with an approval rating at under 10%. So I literally went from having the most popular job in America to the least popular job as far as approval ratings go. But I will say that they're good people. Now, one other quick tangent, I can't help myself, but when you get home, check out, go on YouTube and search in Hank Johnson Guam. Promise you, if you need to smile tonight, it's only a 2-minute video, and I promise you that you'll have a good laugh. Now, under the category of how the heck did this guy get elected, this guy is at a House Armed Services Committee hearing, and he has an admiral in front of him, and the topic of his appearance was troop placement on Guam. He's asking the admiral, so Guam is about 7 miles in its shortest point. It's about 12 miles at its longest width. And how many square miles? He asks some question. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't have that information. Well, it's about 7 miles at its shortest length. It's about 12 miles at its longest width. It's about 22 miles from north to south at its length. And the admiral's like, yeah, it's a small island. That was the point. So Hank Johnson says, well, I'm just concerned that this small island, if we place these troops there, will become so overpopulated that it's going to capsize and tip over. Now, this is a House Armed Services Committee hearing. This is a member of Congress questioning an admiral. An admiral, by the way, takes it in stride. You'll get a good laugh just watching the admiral reacting to this point. I will assure you, okay, are there individuals like that in Congress? Yeah, I just gave you an example of one. Here's the good news, is that I do not know of any colleagues within 6 degrees of that question. So it's not just about where your moral compass is, it's also about your intellectual compass. There are also some really smart people But yeah, going back to your original point, you should get rid of, if you get convicted of a felony, you lose your pension.
Thank you.
Good. I guess last two questions. Are Is there anyone else, by the way, or? Okay. Hey.
David Stone, I'm from Hampton Park, which is between North Sea Watermelon and Village here. And
Sorry, what's your name?
David Stone.
David.
There are a lot of bills that are passed which are both foreign and American together, like North American free trade. And lots of times the United States seems to get the short end of the stick. And I was listening to shortwave radio this morning, a talk show, and they had a guy on there in reference to cattle market. And the U.S. farmers have to go by more stringent regulations to sell their cattle. They got to keep more records and everything else. And the foreign farmers can bring their cattle supposedly into this country without going through all that regulation with a lower cost. If something can be done that would start giving the American farmers and workers better chance of making a living here.
Yeah. Well, an excellent question, and this is something that has been a big issue in Congress since the moment I've gotten there. We saw it last year with the debate over Trade Promotion Authority legislation. President Obama and his successor, but President Obama is in the process of negotiating a few different trade deals. One Trans-Pacific Partnership with 12 countries along the Asian, I guess it was 12 countries all around the Pacific, but mostly in Asia. TTIP, which is another trade deal that's getting negotiated, is amongst European countries. And part of this debate, I found myself in the minority as far as my party, because I ended up voting against the Trade Promotion Authority legislation that was passed. It was actually passed through mostly Republican support and some Democratic support. I would support a good trade deal. But just because you enter into a trade deal, that doesn't automatically make it a good trade deal. And there are many examples of trade deals that the U.S. have entered into going back decades that end up creating the example that, the hypothetical and the example that you gave. And the hypotheticals you can make as far as other industries that might be similarly impacted with trade deals in the future. So right now, what's being debated is that the President presented a Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and it has to be ratified by Congress. And I do not favor Congress passing the TPP. It's a complicated issue because this is about trade deals, treaties, statutes, regulations, and sometimes it's specific to an industry, sometimes it goes across all industries, and it's just between countries. In some cases, it's state-by-state rules. So Congress will be debating a bill that might help agriculture in one particular state. I also voted against something called the DARK Act. I believe that you should know, if you want to know what kind of GMOs are in your food, you should have the ability to know that information. Now, there are special interests in Washington that advocate for removing and overriding laws of individual states that have stricter GMO labeling requirements. The consequence, you take like the DARK Act, for example, which would basically override those state rules and have one national standard. Should there be a national standard? with a lot of things, national standards can be good and important, but it depends what the standard itself is. If the standard is so weak that under the banner of saying for improving, for having a national standard and improving the process, all you're really doing is overriding state laws, like Vermont with the GMO one has had the strictest. I ended up voting no. I was actually one of 13 Republicans that voted no on it. But I make the point with regards to the Dark Act and saying the situation state by state with a lot of these rules are different. And that's also part of the debate. It's not just about foreign trade with other countries and with regulations and statutes in Washington, but also different rules that you have one state to another. But just my few thoughts. And I'm sorry. Yeah, he's the next gentleman. Thank you.
You?
Actually, the gentleman with the judge.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
Hi, Patrick O'Connor from Shinnecock Hills. Just to wrap things up from the popularity issue that was before, as a mathematician and a logistical software developer, to just give my personal insight, the polls that are out there are somehow skewed. They show a bit of hypocrisy on the part of the people that do those polls. Most of the people that say, oh, they hate Congress and they think Congress is terrible as a whole, but then you would ask them, how do you feel about your own congressman? Oh, he's perfect. It's all those other congressmen so personally feeling, the fact that someone in Seattle may not feel very good about you doesn't matter to me. You're getting my vote in November, and that's what counts. So,
well, thank you.
So,
I appreciate it. I'm actually friendly.
Go ahead. Question. One thing that as we go through the, there's basically, I have no problem or worry that you personally will fulfill your constitutional obligations to us and do it very well. The problem is that we have an executive branch with a man in the White House right now that's supposedly a constitutional scholar that will do things that are just the opposite of what the Constitution tells him to do. Now, as far as, like I said, when the Congress does things, and I'm saying this, that it covers a whole range of different issues, and you can pick and choose which one you think best suits answering the question, but what can the legislative branch do when the White House, the executive branch, does things and in a particularly executive action and does things opposed to what the legislative does?
Yeah, so you have these three branches of government, and the U.S. Constitution states out powers for different branches. And something that is very telling, that our founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, and if you pulled up the Constitution, look just how big Article 1 is. Article 1 outlines all of the powers of Congress. And you look at the powers that are given to the office of the president, and it's really only 4 different bullets. And even those 4 bullets, in those bullets talk about congressional oversight over the president. And I like to study history and get in the minds of our nation's founders and what they were thinking and what caused our independence in the first place. And I think it's very telling of how our founders crafted the Constitution. That even though we have 3 co-equal branches of government, you have that long list of Article 1 powers, that it looks like there was a concern over an executive branch that would have more power than Congress. Now, what's the number 1 power that Congress has? Is the power of the purse. It has to be effectively used, and I'll tell you who has the most amount of power over Congress's power of the purse is the American people. And I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, so we have an appropriations process in Washington. We pass 12 different appropriations bills throughout the year. Try to get the whole process done by the end of the fiscal year. Now you have the budget passed, there's no continuing resolutions, there's no omnibuses. If you want regular order, if you want your federal government working ideally, by the end of the fiscal year, all 12 appropriations bills have been passed and signed into law. And there is a narrative that can be told for a separate meeting all about our nation's budgeting, where we could spend an hour just talking about this. But I will say that as we went through the entire process last year, the American public wasn't talking about the appropriations process. The American public did talk about the appropriations process when you get within 24 hours of the government running out of funding. And I will offer up that the entire time leading up to that 11th hour, that there are debates that you could watch on C-SPAN, and bills and amendments and people filibustering and not allowing this to go through or that to go through the committee process, but also on the House and the Senate floor. Who has the most amount of power over Congress's power of the purse is the American people. Because what happens is at the end of the day, we end up saying, we don't want the government to shut down under any circumstances. That's what we say at the 11th hour, by the way. This is a debate that will last 24 hours as long as the government's funded. As long as you fund the government, it's over. I will say that it's a disservice to the American people when we don't participate in the debate for the rest of the year, because all we're dealing with at the end of the debate is a soundbite debate over keeping the government open. But when you are spending $1.1 trillion, I would offer that it would be spent much more responsibly if we were having conversations of how do you spend $1.1 trillion. That's a discretionary spend, it's not even the mandatory spend. But that is, to answer the question more specifically, what can Congress do? Is the power of the purse. Now, Congress has oversight powers, with subcommittees and committees and gavels and hearings and all of that, which brings to light certain facts that people can demand, the American public can demand certain results. If there's legislation that you can pass that isn't related to the power of the purse, that is a real power as well. But I would just offer
the executive action actually does its damage just by happening.
Yeah. So as far as some of the executive orders, a lot of it ends up in court. The president's executive order on immigration is currently, next step is the Supreme Court. It was shot down by the U.S. District Court in Texas, upheld by a Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court is going to hear it next. But the judiciary has a role in that as well, as far as that goes.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Let you pick. So I think
And after that question, Congressman Zeldin will stick around for just a little while, but we've decided on a time limit, and this is it. So we've got one question, and we'll let you take that last question.
Or ask that one.
Congressman Zeldin, how do you feel about the replacement of Antonio Scala, which is quite controversial right now?
First off, what a lot of us may not realize is that a lot of Scalia's family actually lives out here in York 1. And something that I was insulted by, and I blame both parties for, is that the moment Justice Scalia passed away, we were talking about his replacement. There's a time for that, and it's an important conversation and debate to be had. My first thought, especially because I know some of the justices' family out here in New York 1, is I was insulted by it. When you move past that, I will tell you this, whether it was 100 years ago or 100 years from now, this scenario was predictable then, is predicted now, and is predictable in the future. This is how an election year Supreme Court appointment will always be in this country that we love, this democracy that we love. If you are the party that is in control of the White House, you are going to advocate for whoever the president nominates to be confirmed by the Senate. Understandable. I don't fault the party that is in power for having that position. That's the way it will always be, no matter which party is in the White House. If your party is not in the White House, your position will always be, let the American people decide in November who they want to have as their next Supreme Court justice. So whether it was Bush in 2008, it's Bill Clinton in 2000, Reagan in 88, you probably remember what happened with Robert Borg in 87. These debates are predictable. And there's really no way for me to be able to play referee or be able to predict how it plays out. Because just like the answer to my last question, if you ask me to predict how this plays out, it's going to be the American people who are going to decide now. Forget about the November piece. The American people will decide now, because what will happen is the president is going to nominate someone. The next step is going to be, should that person have a hearing? And it's going to be talked about in the news, and there's going to be polls, and then there's going to be a decision made as to whether or not whoever this person is should have a hearing. If you ask me how that's going to play out, I predict the person's going to have a hearing. I'm guessing. I could be wrong. But I think whoever is nominated is going to have a hearing. Is that person going to be confirmed? I doubt it. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that this is how a presidential election year appointment, this is how the process takes place. If I had to guess how it's going to play out, the president's going to nominate someone, there's going to be a hearing, and I don't think the person's going to get confirmed. I could be wrong, but I'm taking a stab at it. By the way, right before Iowa, I went on my Facebook page and I said, I predict that Iowa is going to be Cruz, Trump, Rubio, in that order. I said, and as far as the Democrats, I can't tell. I would say Hillary or Bernie. It's a coin toss. And someone responded to my post saying, like, coin toss? Really? You can't take a side? Who is it going to be? Is it going to be Hillary or Bernie? The person's giving me a hard time. Now, I didn't see the post until after the results. And I ended up then, my comment in response was linking to the article about how Iowa was decided by a coin toss. I got lucky with Iowa. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out with the Supreme Court battle, but I think that's how it's going to play.
Okay, I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you for, I say, your first visit. And we hope it will be an annual event if possible. You were a wonderful audience, and we've got to know you a bit better. And so we want to give you something to remember us by, a Rogers Memorial Library bag. A lot of counties. Okay, so thank you. Thank the staff, people who were wonderful to deal with, and thanks for coming.